Okay. Oh, I forgot to stop my browser. We'll see if I need it. Right. Alright, guys, I don't know what to call this today, so I just called it the topic that we picked. Hope that's okay with you. Let's see. I don't hate this music, but it's kinda... Right. So, today we're gonna talk about senses. I hope you're all excited. I'm going to do something similar as with last episode, where we go through topics sort of one by one. And if there's input, then feel free to put in the input. I don't know. Is that how you'd say it in English? But feel free to ask questions, whatever you want, as always. I know that a lot of people are busy today, which is unfortunate. But I really don't have another day to stream, so we're going to stream today. We're going to see who is going to show up. But yeah, a lot of people in my community actually said that they don't have time, so we'll see. Alright. So what we're going to be talking about today, firstly, is I'm going to explain basically what a sense is in the general definition that I'm going to be using. And we're going to talk a bit about human senses, as you can probably tell. Just as a sort of an introduction, we don't have to stop by that for a long time. Then we're going to go to questions from the Discord. I only have one today, which is surprising because last time I had too many questions. This time I only had one. So, you know, we'll see. But like I said, a lot of people were busy, so yeah. And then after that, I'm going to move on to some more general information, and then we're going to explore 4 different senses that I picked a little bit more in depth. So I hope I picked good ones, that it's a little bit interesting for everyone. We'll see how it's going to go. I have a different picture for every chapter because someone, like after the last episode, someone told me, hey, you should make a picture for every chapter, so then when you upload it to YouTube, it's much easier to make the chapters. Which is a great idea, so I did that. But yeah, I'm not gonna put a pinned message on the chat this time because I don't think, like, we're not talking about ethics, so I don't think people will feel threatened or whatever, or need to be told to be respectful. Yeah, this is way more just information. It's just nice change of pace, you know? And then the next couple weeks, we won't have one as usual, and then I think in 3 weeks, so 2 weeks we don't have a stream, and then in the third week we'll have another topic. So if you're interested in that, keep a lookout in the Discord. I made a role for everyone who wants to be kept updated on all the podcasts slash lectures slash whatever you want to call this, and also want to have some input, so you can pick that up if that interests you. Yeah, I guess we can get started. Oh, yeah, what I should mention, I also put this in the description usually, but what I should mention is if you are interested in all the sources for YouTube, they'll be in the description. For Twitch, obviously, this is live, so I don't have a description. If you want the sources, I can send them to you. Just text me on Discord. I'll send you the list. You know, if you're interested in reading up on it yourself or some extra details. I try to use scientific sources for the most part. If I need some general information, sometimes I'll use something that's a little bit less scientific. But yeah, if you want to view the sources yourself and like make your own opinions, you can. I think that's important. So that's why I always write them down. Paper bag. Okay. Sure. So let's get started, I guess. So firstly, I wanted to, like I just said, I want to talk a little bit about what a sense is, because I actually did not know the definition. So I looked it up. And there's a couple different definitions that I could find. In general, it's an ability to understand, recognize value, and react to something, which is very broad, but of course we're using it in a biological way. So, a physical ability to, well, like experience the world around you, right? To be aware of what's going on. And most senses are specific mechanisms that are evolved over time to, well, give us a certain information about the world, right? We'll touch on this a little bit more later about how to define a sense in itself. Because surprisingly, not everybody agrees in some ways. Like some people will say some things are senses, and other people will say they're like specialized ways to use a certain other sense. So it was interesting. It was interesting. I don't expect to read questions about this part, but if there are, just, you know, let me know. Put it in the chat. And then I'll answer. But yeah, once we go to school and we learn about senses, we learn about human senses first, right? In preschool usually. And we learn that we have 5. So you see them on the screen: vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch. Everybody is familiar with these 5 senses. Or you should be. Right? Hello. Did I not change it? I forgot to click on save. How about now? Is that better? I need to remember to change it on the font then. Thank you for telling me. Oh, that is dumb. Ah, yes. Okay, we're good. Yes. Welcome. We're talking about senses today. I hope you will enjoy and maybe learn something. I love learning things, so. I learned a lot doing research anyway. Let's go away. Alright. So yes, in preschool we usually learn we have 5. The 5 main ones. Then if you get older and you are interested in biology, maybe you'll learn that we actually have more. which is true, humans have more than 5 senses, but when we talk about human senses, we usually say that we have 5. This is like inaccurate, but it's an easy way of like talking about it. So I just realized I'm going to have to change pictures all the time. I have numbered my pictures 1 to 8, so I can just go to picture 2. So here's another picture that is a little bit more specific. So this one is listing 8 senses, right? So it still is listing vision, touch, taste, smell, and hearing, but it's also listing 3 other ones that most people might not be as familiar with. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of them. So it's saying vestibular, proprioception, and interoception. Oh, my dyslexia is gonna go wild this stream. That's fine. But yeah. I'm going to basically go past all of these really quickly. Let's start at the top. Touch. Touch is generally thought to be the first sense that a human develops after they're born. As in, of course you have all of it, but it has to sort of calibrate to the world. And touch is supposed to be the first one that is developed. So touch, of course, there is different kinds of reception. There are touch receptors on our skin, and they transport that information to the brain, and we experience that as touch. But there is a difference between, for example, pain, pressure, hot and cold as well, and itching. Ah yes, that one is different too. So these are like specialized receptors that do each of those things. So that's also why some parts of your body might be more sensitive to touch than other parts, like your fingertips. And other parts might be more sensitive to pain. And if you ever got a tattoo, then you notice there's like tattoo paint jars out there where you can see which parts of the body are more painful than others. That's because of the receptors. So if there's more receptors, then a feeling might be more intense, right? You enjoy tattoo pain. I mean, in general, that's not a bad thing, right? Then if you get a tattoo, you don't have to suffer. Or you do suffer, but it's nice. I don't know. Taste is obviously mostly on the tongue, but fun fact, you also have some taste receptors in your lungs. So when someone says, this tastes like soap, and you're like, do you eat soap? And of course they don't eat soap, but if you smell something, you also have a certain sense of what it tastes like. If the particles get into your lungs, then you have a certain sense of what it tastes like, which is really interesting in my opinion. I mean, taste and smell obviously work together a lot, right? So it wasn't that surprising when I learned this, but it's still really cool. Vision, of course, it's our eyes, which responds to certain wavelengths of light. There's receptors in our eyes that can register that, and then the information goes to the brain, and the brain produces an image. For any questions that can be asked for vision, obviously, is like, do we all see the world the same way? Is our green all the same? Is our blue all the same? Is our light perception all the same? I believe last time I read up about it, the general consensus right now about the colors is that we probably see the same. So my green would be the same as your green. But they're not 100% sure, at least last time I checked. And then hearing, of course, there's a mechanism in your ear that allows us to hear. Unless you're colorblind, yes. That's when your senses don't work as intended, basically. Yeah. I'm gonna talk about colorblindness a little bit more later, but it's interesting for sure. So for hearing, there's specific receptors in your ear that have like tiny little hair-like appendages that are in your ear canal that can be moved. Obviously, sound is turbulence in the air, right? So the little hairs get moved and then the little receptors feel that, they turn that into electric signal, it goes to your brain, and we interpret that as sound. It's really cool. I don't know. I find this so amazing. Like, I can barely even comprehend. I studied ears in school and I still can barely comprehend how it works. It's so cool. But it does work. And we all just take it for granted. I don't know. Anyway, those are the 5 basic ones. And then the bottom, those are the 3. So the first one, if we start from the right, it's interoception. And actually I had to look up this word. I'm gonna be honest, I have to look it up. But it's basically any perception that your body has of what is happening inside. So, for example, we don't have the ability to measure the O2 concentration, so the oxygen concentration in our blood, but we can measure CO2, right? So, this is why when you hold your breath, it becomes increasingly hard to hold your breath. Not because oxygen is running out, but because your body is producing more CO2, so the amount of CO2 goes up. And we have receptors, chemoreceptors, that can detect that. Which is nice, very cool. Of course, other interoception would be blood pressure. There's receptors in our bodies that can detect our blood pressure, and if it's high or low, we can respond to it. And of course, most of this is subconscious, right? But there's still senses. There still count. So I don't know if that's clear to you guys. But basically this is an umbrella term that is used for multiple ways of perception. Alright, then we can move on to the next one, proprioception. Some people might have heard of this one. It's a little bit more common. Yeah, so breathing is automatic, exactly. Unless you consciously start breathing. It's one of those things we can do automatically and consciously. Yay. Hey Amber. Hope you're doing alright. What's up to you too? Not much, we're talking about human senses for a bit before we dive into the animal ones. So feel free to stay a while, ask questions, hang out, talk to us. Ooh.
26 months, sheesh.
Loud. That's a long time. That's like more than 2 years. Thank you for the sub. Yes. So that's the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing as colorblindness, but basically, if something in your body isn't working as correctly, then it might need intervention. And let me tell you this, with all the systems that are constantly working to keep us alive, it's remarkable that things don't go wrong more often. Yes, I always use my model for podcast stream. I think it's more interactive. Especially since there's no movement going on the screen otherwise. Plus it feels more as if I'm talking to you guys instead of just sitting here talking to a screen, you know. Right, so where were we? Proprioception, yes. So some people might have heard of this, especially English speakers. but it's basically the ability to know where we are in space. So if I ask you to close your eyes and take your hand and touch the tip of your nose, you can do it, right? Because you have a certain sense of where your arm is, and your hand is, and your nose is, right? It enables you to also just like it helps with walking as well. And for example, if you jump into bed, it helps to cushion your fall because you know where your arms and legs are. So that's proprioception. Where are we in space? And this is a very important sense. If you lose your proprioception, it's not good. It's not good. It can cause dizziness, nausea, headaches. Inability to pick up things, right? Is that clear? Do you, for obviously for those of you who didn't know what proprioception was, do you understand what it is if I explain it this way? Mm. Humans are actually pretty good at this, which is nice. Good for us, I guess. Mm-mm. Right. So then the last one, vestibular, it has to do with balance. So we know where we are compared to where the Earth is, basically. So it's not the same as our position in space. It's our position compared to where the Earth is. So basically, if we lay flat, we know we're laying flat, right? Even if we have our eyes closed, instead of leaning against a wall, for example. And if we do a salto, we know we went and did a salto instead of just jumped. That's vestibular. Yes. So obviously, because in space there's no gravity, the vestibular sense doesn't really do much, right? So this is also why astronauts have to train for that sensation, because it can be really debilitating and it can make you pretty sick. And we can trick it too. Like, for example, going on a roller coaster, it sort of tricks our vestibular system because it can't keep up with all the changes. And then we sort of lose that sense of where we are compared to the Earth, which some people find an enjoyable feeling for a short amount of time. But it still counts as a sense. And then there is another one that I want to touch on because it's important for what we're going to talk about later. That is actually not on the chart, and it's thermoception, aka the ability to feel warmth or cold. And of course, this is mostly also on our skin. So we can feel when something is cold, and we can feel when something is warm, and we can distinguish between hot and cold. This is warmer, this is colder. That is a sense. Practical for warm showers. Yes, exactly. And there is a point where thermoception goes into pain, right? If something is too hot, we sort of pull our hand away. It's like touching a hot stove. Stop with the ads. I can't dismiss this one. That's unfortunate. So people who, for example, don't have pain perception, also won't know if they're being burned, stuff like that. So obviously all the senses really work together, and our brain is taking in all this information from all of our senses constantly in order to keep us alive and like have us make sense of the world. But yeah, there's people who might not have taste. There's people who might not be able to smell anything. There's deaf people and blind people, and it's possible that your senses don't work or don't work all the way, right? They sort of work, but not really. And it affects your ability to interact with the world and understand the world as most people do. And the condition where people can't feel pain is actually really interesting. And a lot of people find it interesting. That's also why it pops up so much in medical dramas, even though it's really, really rare. Because the ability to feel pain is actually really important to keep you alive. Anyway, so far on human senses. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. If not, then we can move on to the question I got from the Discord. I'm gonna run out of water too quickly. No more questions? Alright. Let's go to my next picture. It's a dumb picture, but then I know where to cut my my chapters. Look, it's water droplets. Yes. I'm gonna put it underneath my title. There we go. Right. So question from the Discord. Like I said, we only have one this week. Last time we had too many, and now we only have one. Depends on how busy people are. It comes from Passion. He is asking if there's animals who can detect wetness. And I feel like this question needs a little bit of introduction slash context. Right. So for all the senses that humans have, they cannot detect wetness. And you might think, oh, but I can feel when something is wet, right? And you'd be wrong in a way. Because we can detect if something is wet. But we can learn that a certain drop in temperature combined with a certain sensation for our touch, right? Means that something is wet. And we are very, very good at this. We can learn this. And we do. But that doesn't mean that we can't, that we can actually detect when something is wet, because we can't. We just interpret the information we get from our other senses as, oh, this must be wet, right? And I've experienced this firsthand. When you're doing surgery, then there is two different scenarios where this can happen. For example, if a certain fluid is body temperature, then it might not feel as if it's wet. It might just feel as if, you know, you're touching something warm. And in the other way that we can detect wetness, if you're wearing gloves, and for surgeons it will most likely be a nitrile or latex glove, which are very thin because obviously we need to handle our instruments and we need to know what we're doing. So we need to be able to feel what we're doing. So they're very thin, but that means that we can still detect certain changes of temperature and certain ways that feels like what we're touching. So sometimes our brains might interpret this as our hands being wet, even though they're not, because they're inside of the glove. And I've experienced this, and it's really weird, because you'll be standing there and you'll be like, my gloves are broken, my hand's wet. And then you look at it and it's not. Like, your glove is not broken. It's just that your brain said that your hand was wet because it's learned how to do that. It's weird. But it happens. So humans can detect wetness. Hello, Nim. Sometimes you're just sweating, yes. That is fair. That's why there's powdered gloves. But yeah, it's a really weird sensation. It's hard to explain if you haven't actually felt it before yourself. But yeah, we don't have a sense that can detect liquid. So Passion's question, obviously, in that regard, is quite interesting, because then are there animals that can, right? I just sweat. Yeah. It's not great. But we don't wear gloves for fun, right? We do that because it's hygienic or safety measure. So I went looking if there are animals. It was very hard to actually find out, because I was looking for scientific research on this topic, and it turns out it's pretty hard to research in general. Plus, it's not that interesting, so not many people researched it, but I did find some papers. Which was nice. That's fair, Glavo. Then it would be a hygienic reason, right? So, turns out the ability to sense wetness does exist. It is done by hydroreceptors or hygroreceptors. I told you my dyslexia is gonna go wild this stream. I'm so sorry, but basically, receptors that can detect humidity. And it seems like so far it's only been proven in certain insects and arachnids, so spider types. And it's really interesting because there are several different mechanisms that they think evolved separately. So instead of one animal evolving the ability to feel when something is wet and that just, spreading in the family tree, it might have evolved in several species separately with separate different ways. Which is interesting because that means that whenever that happens, it tells me that this ability is giving you a significant advantage in survival. And I can understand that for insects, because obviously the humidity of their environment can be very important for them. For us, it's not as much, right? If I'm in a humid environment, sure, maybe I'll struggle to sweat a bit more, but it's not instantly a problem. I couldn't find any other animals that have been proven to have this ability. So I don't know if you guys have any more questions, or because there's not that much else I can say about it. Does it count if aquatic animals can't breathe due to lack of water? No. Because the point I'm making here is there's certain ways to know if something is wet, but the actual detection of fluid is something else, right? Like when I drink water, or I try to drink something that is not liquid, I will know which one is the liquid. But that doesn't mean that I have the sense to detect wet, right? So that doesn't count. I don't know if fish can do it, because obviously, like I said, there's not that much research. The only thing that I could find is that they found proof of it in insects and arachnids. Other than that, no idea. The thing with research is, especially if you go to university and you have to research certain fields, you'll find out that there is a lot of research, but at the same time, there's not enough research, and you'll always find certain questions that there's just no answer to yet. But yeah. I hope that answers Passion's question. I don't think he's here right now. I think he had to study. Eating dinner? That's early. Enjoy your food. Hope it's good. Thank you for lurking. Let's move on to the next topic. Topic 4. Boop. Oh, it's massive. Hello. Look, I brought a creature. There. Because before we go into senses that animals have but humans don't, right? I wanted to touch on senses that we have but animals don't. Because the way species experience the world is all different, but that doesn't mean that they're not as able, right? So I don't know if any of you recognize this animal. If you think you do, guess. I think it's interesting. It was quite famous on the internet a while back. No one? Alright. So this is an old. It's a type of aquatic animal, mostly found in caves. And the reason I picked this guy is because he's blind. So I thought he would make a good background for this part. So the reason this animal is blind is that he lives in caves and there's no light there. So having eyes or an ability to see would not give the animal an evolutionary advantage. And they've lived in caves so long that eyes just have become obsolete, right? So they experience the world in a different way as we do. But that's because they have different needs than we do. And most of the senses that we'll talk about during this episode, I don't know, I'm just gonna call it episode. I still don't know what we're doing. But this episode is are evolved from a need that animal had. And the reason we don't have it usually is because we don't have that need. So don't be sad if you can't do these things that these animals can do. I mean, you can be a little bit sad. I'm always sad. But yeah, there is a reason. Oh no, Sandal. All right. And then there are also animals that might not have the sense that we have, but they have something similar that accomplishes the same goal. So what I mean by that, for example, is flies, right? They can taste with their feet. They land on something, they can taste it. And spiders can hear with their legs. Yay. So that's just a similar sense, but it looks different. But I'm still going to, for the purpose of this stream, I'm still going to say that it's the same. So if I'm talking about hearing, it might not be like the animal has an ear. It might just be that it can detect sound. So if anything is ever unclear, just let me know. Um, so something that I did research, because it's just a personal interest of mine, if animals can actually feel hot and cold. We just talked about how humans can feel the difference between hot and cold. And I couldn't find a conclusive answer. Maybe I just didn't look in the right places. But so far, I'm not sure if it's proven that there's animals who can't. I know there's a lot of animals who can, but it would be interesting. And then there's some other animals that I know about because they're pets, right? So that might not have the same way of seeing the world. So a lot of people know that dogs are colorblind, so their vision is different from ours. Birds can't detect spiciness. That's a fun one. So spice is actually not a flavor, it's a feeling. So it's more of a specific receptor that can detect that feeling. And it's actually a pain receptor, which is why some people react so extremely to spiciness, because it is a pain response. And some people like it because, well, yes. But birds actually don't have a receptor that the little chemical, the capsaicin chemical, fits onto, so they can't detect it. So they will not detect spiciness. So they can eat chili peppers all day long, and they will just taste the flavor, but they can't detect the spice, which is interesting. And then cats, they can't really taste sweets. They're very bad at tasting sweets because they're obligatory carnivores. So it was never really needed for them. So it's funny, especially when I see cat food and they add like sweet ingredients. I'm like, doesn't matter, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of animals that have senses that we might not have, but there's also a lot of senses that we have that animals don't have. So don't be jealous. No jealousy today. Alright? Yeah, I hope so. Well, that was the generic part of what I wanted to talk about. Now I wanted to just pick a few senses and explain a little bit more in detail what they are, how they work, what they do. Stuff like that. And I don't like this song, and I am going to skip it and poop. Yes. So I picked 4 of them. There's obviously loads more. We could do even more if people find this one interesting. Maybe I'll do part 2 at some point. But I want to explore some other topics first, so we'll see. Let's go to the first one. I know you guys can see the red borders, but I don't know how to turn it off. Boop! First one. Alright, anyone want to guess what this is? It's funny to me. Go on, guess. It basically says it on the picture. No one. Alright. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is basically an extension of vision. But in some cases it's credited as a different sense. and it's the ability to see infrared or ultraviolet. And infrared, of course, we know mostly from thermal cameras. So yeah, like thermal vision, right? And ultraviolet, as humans, well, we don't do much with it. In science, of course, they do, but yeah. Infrared has more practical uses. So we do use it. We have cameras that can detect it. But some animals, actually quite a few animals, can just see infrared. And of course, the visual spectrum of light, when we talk about that, is what's visual to us. So some of these animals that might be able to see infrared might have trouble with what we can see, the visual light spectrum. And some might not. Some lucky animals can just see more. So this is probably the closest we're ever gonna get to seeing other colors. This is just an image that I pulled from the internet that is claiming this is what the snake sees. Right, so left would be what we see and right is what would the snake see. It's a nice visualization. Is it true? We don't know. Because obviously we can't see infrared. So the way we make it visible is with colors, right? We take the colors and we put that on the screen and then we can see it. That's the same way the heat cameras work as well. But does the snake experience it that way? Does he also see colors? Because he can also see, at least somewhat, the visual spectrum of light, right? Does he see different colors that we can't even imagine? We don't know. And this is one of the reasons that this ability is so incredibly interesting to me. Because when we're talking about new colors or extra colors, then we simply can't imagine one because, like, you can't come up with a new color, right? That's not a thing we can do. So we have no clue how these animals see that. We just know they can. I don't know, I think it's cool. You can do something similar if you have a big friend group. There's a game like where there's a bunch of little squares and one of them is a slightly different hue. Play that with a really big friend group. Because I think 1 in a couple hundred, I'm not sure how rare it is, I'm an animal doctor, not a human doctor, people has an extra receptor in their eyes and can see extra colors, different shades. So if you have a really big friend group, I highly encourage you to play that game and see who it is, because it's really interesting. I did this in high school. We played the game and most people would get to like 60 score, right? And then we found someone who actually had this mutation and they were quite easily able to get to 136. And they were like, it's so easy, it's right there, it's right there. And we were like, I don't see it. It's literally, it's not there. So it's really cool. But that's somehow how I explain to myself, or how I imagine that ultraviolet and infrared sight is as well. It's just something that we can't actually imagine. We can visualize it, but we can't imagine it, how it really is. And of course for utility, I mean for snakes, being able to see infrared is super useful because, well, animals produce warmth, which is infrared, and they can see it. Ultraviolet is a little bit more niche, I would say. It's mostly birds and butterflies who use it. And I've seen really nice videos on YouTube, which I can't show because of copyright. But if you want to, just look at look up the video ultraviolet vision. And it's really cool because certain plants that look just green to us, right? Very boring, just green. Under ultraviolet vision, they actually have really intricate details. And it's for flowers the same. especially for butterflies, obviously they are looking for certain flowers, and some flowers might actually glow for them. Like I said, we don't know how they experience the world, but this is a bit of how you could imagine it for yourself. Like they literally, as if they're emitting light, but to us it just looks like green flower. It's really cool. Welcome back, Nim. Shrimp stew? I haven't come across shrimp. There are certain fish who can do it. Certain rodents, like really small rodents, mice types, and turtles. But I'm not sure about shrimp. I would have to look that up. Any other questions about infrared and ultraviolet vision? I'm always worried that I mix those up. Ultraviolet and infraviolet. Those are not things. Those aren't things. Fun fact, do you know why it's called infrared and ultraviolet? You know, why not throw in a fun fact? Let's go. It is called that because the visual spectrum of light runs from red to violet. And infra obviously means below. So it's literally below red. So the wavelength of light determines the color. And the wavelength of red is the last one we can see. So infrared is below red. So the wavelength below red. And that's infrared light of vision. And the same is for ultraviolet. It's above violet. Great way to remember it. Hotness? Like the ability to feel warmth? Because this is just vision. Yes, yes, this is really cool. You can find videos. This is how sunscreen commercials sometimes actually advertise their sunscreens. Because it can block the well, the wavelength, right? Oh. Hello, Passion. Thank you for the sub. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, definitely, if you wear sunscreen or the certain types of makeup that block out the UV rays from the sun, then the animals that can see ultraviolet will be able to see that. Fun, right? OP hunters confirmed. In some ways. Ooh. I adjusted my chair. I promise I didn't fall over. Any other questions about vision before we move on? No? Yes? Our vision for the future. I mean, I don't know. You go ask the steak yourself. On why we can't see it. See, I told you guys, don't be jealous. It's most likely because it wasn't as necessary for our survival, so we just didn't evolve the ability to. But basically, the photoreceptor cells in your eyes are just not sensitive enough to those wavelengths. So sad, you know? Is there? I mean, probably. Like I said, we already have built cameras that can see infrared and ultraviolet, but they translate it into an image that we can see, like the mouse on the screen. It's just colors. The animals that see infrared and ultraviolet probably don't experience it this way. This is just a way for us to visualize what's going on. But they might see other colors or a certain glow or no colors at all. Or, like, we don't know. You want to experience it like a mouse? Yeah, that's the thing. We can't because we don't know how. We don't know. I'm sorry. But we have the next best thing, which is a machine that can translate it into something that we can detect. But yeah. Let's move on. Let's go to the next one. Wait. Is this the right one or I want the other one? This one is better. I prefer this one. I didn't know I could open files that were this size. I mean, I would ask you to guess what we're gonna talk about, but it's already on the picture, so it seems kind of... But yeah, let me get rid of the red bars. Sound, yes. So obviously, I mean, it says it on the picture, we're going to be talking about echolocation. And this is one of those interesting ones that not everybody agrees on if it's a separate sense or if it's a specialization of being able to hear. Freaking ad break, go away. I don't want ad break. You know, I'm gonna use this ad break to find another album. Something that's a little bit more consistent, because I feel like I'm losing my mind. I mean, yeah, obviously the anatomical differences help, but then you still need to be able to use the information that you're getting to determine location, right? Because echolocation is, in a way, it's a way to figure out the location of an object. So just being able to hear the reflection of the sound is not enough. You need to be able to interpret it into information that you can use. Yes, actually I wanted to talk about that passion. Some blind people have been able to learn this. Usually people who have been blind since a very young age. I mean, Nim, I have a command that shows you all the commands, but nobody ever uses it. I have a lot of fun commands, you know. But yeah, there are humans who can learn how to do this. I have a reference for that as well, for a couple of famous people that have learned how to do this, and the ones that got really, really good at it, they were able to even do things like play sports, play basketball, or ride a bike. It's not broken, there's a delay on it. I think it's like a 3-second delay or something. No, it's not just bats and whales. In fact, there are some birds that can do this too. And I'm so jealous. So there's like birds that can see infrared, right? Wait, no, I'm saying that wrong. Birds that can see ultraviolet, and then there's also birds that can echolocate. And they can also fly. And there's even more senses that we're gonna touch on today that they also have. You know, that's gonna make me jealous. No, so bats use ultrasonic frequencies or higher, right, than we can hear. Birds actually use frequencies of sounds that are in the spectrum that we can hear, which is nice. And whales, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure. I think it's probably lower frequencies than we can hear. But in general, you can use any sound as long as the wavelength is not too low. You can use it to echolocate. And of course, in the ocean, it's very efficient because water carries sound very far. You would go mad if you could hear 16K. I mean, as we age, our ability to hear high sounds diminishes, right? This is why young people can hear the cat scares and older people cannot. Yeah, I think they're in the low range. So the whole spectrum is basically being used for animals that echolocate. Humans that echolocate usually use clicks. Clicks or pops. Apparently that works the best for us. Yeah, I mean pixel-wise, if you can even like connect it to that, pixel-wise our eyes are mostly the same. But some humans can see less motion blur than others, or more motion blur. So some humans can see more detail while images are moving. And guess what? They did like a non-scientific study into esports. And people who play high FPS esports, like shooters and stuff, usually have this ability where they can see more details while things are moving. It literally, they literally have talent. They're literally born with a talent for this type of sports. I don't know, I thought that was really cool. Anyway, random fact. Talent, as in yes, they're born with an edge. I mean, passion in a way, if you have to work hard for it, then you might even get better at it in some ways. This is why some people with dyslexia actually can read faster than the average person, because they develop ways that work for them, because a normal ways doesn't work. Well, bats actually live in swarms, right? What is a swarm of bats called? I'm gonna find out. But, so they can distinguish their own echolocation, but I don't know if they also use the clicks and peeps made by the other bats to locate the world around them. Because I would assume that if they can do it with just their voice, they can also do it with others. So maybe because the bats are all in one big group, they actually map out the whole area in front of them instead of just where they're locating like their voice to, you know? A group of bats is either called a cloud or a colony. Alright. A cloud of bats. Colony. Yeah, alright. Is the music too loud, by the way? I can turn it down if it's too loud. It's fine? Alright. Yeah, I know. Some people also use cauldron, apparently. A cauldron of bats. But yeah, echolocation is really interesting because the fact that humans can learn it, does that mean we have the sense, or is it in fact just a specialization of hearing? I'm not sure. You can make your own conclusions. Subtle, but okay. Let's move on to the next one. The stream won't be as long, by the way, as the ethics one. uh, It's usually pulses, Nim. Several different, like, short pulses that are emitted one after the other. Alright, here we have the next picture. Who wants to guess which sense we're gonna talk about? I mean, you're close. We're gonna talk about magnetoreception. That's the actual official word for it. It's magnetoreception. Humans don't have this one. Yes, yes, passion. Okay. And of course, as you guys already know, like from your answers, the most famous animal that does this is pigeons. And what magnetoreception basically is that they can sense the polarity of the Earth's magnetic field. And the funny thing is, there's actually several animals that can do this, and we don't understand fully the mechanism. Magneto. But it's not just pigeons. There's also some fish that can do this. And funny enough, bees. So you guys know how bees dance to communicate, right? And how they can remember where they found flowers. The way that they find their way around the world or back to a certain flower or a hive is by using magnetoreception. Those little tiny insects, they can do it. We cannot. And it's very, very precise as well. So the fact that they can find a specific flower again after going back to the hive by using this ability means it's pretty precise. Can we feel magnets at all? Yes and no. No, we don't have magnetoreception. Yes, if you take a really, really, really strong magnet, you'll feel something. You know how I know this? Because I've had an MRI. Actually, several MRIs. Actually, quite a lot of MRIs. MRIs are just enormous magnets. This is why you can't enter while wearing anything metallic at all. They're really, really strong. Much stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. And our bodies consist out of a lot of different molecules, and those molecules are built out of certain atoms. And yes, passion, there's iron in our body, but that amount is very small. The thing that really reacts is the hydrogen atoms in your body, because there's a lot of them. And the way an MRI works is it lines up all of these hydrogen atoms, and that's how they produce the picture. I mean, I'm not a radiologist, so that's as far as my knowledge about this topic goes. But it's really cool. I recommend looking into it if you want to. Thank you for the hydrate, passion. Yeah. But yeah. And once you're in an MRI for long enough, you can actually feel heat being created sometimes by these atoms shifting. Which is cool, so we can feel that something is going on, but we can't feel the magnetism itself. The cold from the contrast fluid. Yes, of course, if they inject a cold... like, we can feel hot and cold, we talked about this. So if they inject something cold into your veins, you're gonna feel it. You know, if they actually inject saline into... like, if I get an IV, I can taste it. Some people have this ability. It's not an official sense, but some people apparently have taste receptors in certain parts of their vestibular tract. Or not vestibular. Dutch. You know what I mean. I mean, we're family, so we might have the same genetic genetic modification. But yeah, some people can taste it. It's really cool. Can we detect magnetic fields? In a way, yes, but not really. I hope that answers your question. And Nim, can they also feel other magnetic fields? Yes, we think they can. We think they can. Of course, the Earth's magnetic field is not as strong, right? I mean, it's pretty strong. But at the same time, yeah. You know what? Yes. I don't know. I mean, every once in a while, and a while being a couple centuries at least, the Earth's polarity like reverts, right? So what is now the North Pole would then be the South Pole. If you didn't know this, another fun fact for you. But yeah, every now and then, the Earth's polarity like swaps. I wanted to say switch and swap at the same time, that didn't go well. That also means that compasses would work the opposite way. They will point towards the South Pole. But I don't know if we would be able to sense if the Earth's magnetic field would change. Technically, I guess so, Nim, but it would be very expensive to do that. Plus, I'm not sure what the benefit is. You need to find a really curious, really bored billionaire. But yeah, certain fish also use this to navigate. We're actually finding more and more animals that can do this. Yeah, exactly, but then it's not a sense. So the actual sensation of feeling the magnetic fields, yeah, we don't have a specialized system for that. Any more questions about this one? I mean, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't call a pigeon a small animal. I would say it's at least medium-sized. Thank you for the lurk, passion. Anything bigger than a pigeon? Not that I could find. But it's, like I said, it's very hard to study senses, right? We can't go up to an animal and say, hey, elephant, for example. Do you know what the Earth's magnetic field feels like? Yeah. You know? Not exactly, no. We know which mechanisms the animals have in order to use it. This is also how we know that the animals can, right? So pigeons have certain specialized area in their head, in their beak area, where they can sense magnetoreception, and bees have it in their abdomen. And we know this because this is something we can check. We can check the anatomy of the animals and we can make an assumption about what it does. But how they actually get the information and then translate that into basically a roadmap and then know how to navigate around, we don't know that yet. Would be cool though, right? Because we're learning from animals all the time. The reason planes fly is that people studied the shape of the wing of a bird. The reason we have sonar is because they studied echolocation. You know, I'm sure eventually we'll find out. And we'll probably be able to replicate it and use it ourselves. It might already be way further than what I've found in my research, who knows. Any other questions about this topic? Or should we move on to the last one that I prepared? Alright, let's move on since I don't see any questions pop up. Last one that I prepared. We can talk about other things, of course. Anyone want to guess what I'm referring to? I try to find, as you can see, I try to find pictures that had the source in them, because I like to show my sources. I mean, it basically says it on the description, right? Is there a clue? Alright, so this is called Electroreception. Does that ring a bell? Probably does. It's the ability to sense electricity. If we had this, we would go crazy. Like with everything that is using electricity these days in our world. No, we cannot. I can't hold my hand above my laptop and say, yes, there's that many volts in here. So from what I could find, this seems mostly exclusive to sharks, which is cool. They have a specific organ for this called the ampullae of Lorenzini. I probably butchered that, I'm so sorry. And they can detect and interpret electrical fields. So obviously everything that uses electricity is emitting electrical fields, right? Electroshocks. Yeah, but that would probably be heat and pain, right? So then you're using different, the same as detecting wetness. We can't detect wetness, but we can still make a general assumption that something is wet. If you get shocked, you can still make a general assumption that, hey, I got shocked. But the shark would not be shocked at all. Like, for example, if you get shocked by a chair because it's static electricity, shark would know there's static electricity is there before touching it. Yeah, so sharks can actually detect 1/1,000,000th of a volt, and we think it might be even less in their environment. Which is, like, think about that. 1/1,000,000th of a volt. That is insane, right? That's so astronomically tiny. Yeah, so and how they use this, of course, is like you said, muscles. They are we use our muscles because of our nerves, right? Our brain decides, hey, I want to clap my hands, right? Then our muscles need to do work in order to bring our hands together. And in order to send that information to our muscles, we use nerves. And nerves use an electrical charge to transport that information. right? And that charge is large enough that a shark can sense it. So sharks use this to hunt mostly because their eyesight in general is not that great. Obviously, there's a bunch of species of sharks. That's why I'm talking so in such a general manner. But if a fish in front of them moves, they can literally feel that electrical pulse. They can feel that electrical field in the water in front of them and know where the fish is. So no, we can't do this. And like I said, I think we would go absolutely crazy if we could. Because let's be honest, everything in our world these days is electric. The fridge is electric, microwave, your phone. There's electrical cables in the walls. You know, you would probably go crazy. Yes, so whenever the fish moves, they will feel that. Or, well, be able to detect it. Because, again, we don't know how they experience it, right? An experience is very hard to quantify. And we know, in general, how it's done. But yeah, how we can't ask a shark how he experiences it. I'm not sure about that. It might be. We know that like boats using sonar is very disruptive for dolphins because of their reliance on echolocation, right? So I would assume that if we take boats into the ocean that have huge electrical fields for sharks, that's also all strange. At best, disruptive as worst. But yeah, this one seems to be mostly specific to sharks, and it's really sensitive. Some scientists actually think that they might use it for more as just hunting. They might also use it for navigation and stuff like that. And as you can read in this paper from 1994, they might think that the organ itself, so the thing that detects the electricity in the shark, might also be used to detect other things, so as temperature, pressure, and salinity. That is really cool. And by studying animal senses in this manner, we can learn a lot about not just the animal itself, but also just the world and how we interpret it. Because, make no mistake, even though most of us can see, right? What you see is still just electrical pulses being interpreted by your brain, right? In general, we are us, but our personalities and interests and everything that we experience are just tiny electrical pulses in our brains. Most people know this, but when you talk about it and think about it, it's actually really weird. I mean, even just the images that our eyes see are inverted in our brains and then reverted back up to its original, like, right side up way of thinking. Like, it's incredible. But in general, we're just tiny and stuck inside our bodies. I don't know. I always found it interesting to think about. And who knows? Like, I think Passion was talking about bionics and stuff. Maybe in the future, when people are crazy enough to enhance their bodies mechanically, maybe we'll learn from these animals and give ourselves a sense or two. Who knows? So for the direction, it's mostly because the organ is on their head. They can feel basically everything that's in front of them and somewhat to the side. For the distance, I'm not sure. I would have to look it up. I'm not even sure if we know. What's my opinion on it? If it makes people happy. Like, I think people are always striving for the best, perfection, more. Personally, as someone who gets overstimulated already by a lot of things, adding extra senses would probably be a nightmare, and I don't want to do that. But I also understand the appeal. Because being able to see an infrared and ultraviolet, that seems pretty cool, you know? Being able to sense the Earth's magnetic field, pretty cool. But yeah. These days, humans... Let me turn this off, actually. These days, humans already have so many impulses to go through mentally. Way more than in the past. Especially because of course, screens and the internet. The visual impulses are way more. The auditory impulses are way more. So, our brains already have a lot to deal with on a daily basis. If you were to go back to 1800 or something, the amount of things that you would have to compute is just astronomically smaller. And to add even more to that, I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Especially since people are already getting overstimulated, burned out, irritable. From what we already have, I don't know. But again, I'm an animal doctor, right? I'm graduating hopefully this month as a vet. Yeah, I'm not a human doctor. So even though I see and know a lot about a lot of different species, I'm not the expert on that. And you're allowed a different opinion than mine. Let's be clear about that. Right? You just asked, so that's why. Anyway, that is all that I have prepared. I figured a shorter stream would also be fine since I'm basically info dumping on all of you. So yeah. And then maybe it's also a little bit more watchable if you ever want to watch it back. Obviously, if you want the sources, you can either wait for the YouTube video to come out next week, probably. Where I'll cite the sources in the description. Or you can just ask me and I'll send them to you on Discord. I had way more sources for this one than for the ethics one, even though the ethics one was longer. Because of the nature of what we're talking about. Because ethics is mostly subjective, and here we're talking about just, you know, fun facts. There won't be a Mythical Menagerie Chronicles next week or the week after that, but then we will have another one. So, for those of you who have the podcast role, obviously the list of topics is in the Discord. If you'd like to see something specific, just let me know in the same channel. It's pinned. If you're looking for the message, they're pinned. The ones we've done before are crossed out, so it should be easy to navigate. And obviously I'll send the question, I'll ping all of you, and then you can ask me about the topic, and then that weekend we'll talk about it. Like usual. I'll be streaming next week, probably on the vlog. Maybe some other things too. If I can find a one-shot, I would love to do one. Basically a game that I can finish in one sitting. Other than that's the plan. I hope you guys had fun today. Are there any more questions that came into your mind while I was doing my outro? Yes or no? Feel free to still ask them. Feel free to tell me if you had a good time. No, I was so bored. You know, I'm just here because spite. Okay, I'm gonna close my notes. Should we rate someone? We should rate someone. Let's go rate someone. Mute. I don't know, man. Encoding overloaded. Yeah, I know. I'm starting my browser. I'm so sorry, OBS. You're doing well. Spite because of the lack of fish. Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm. Exolotto together is free on Epic. I'm gonna look at that. Maybe we can. That's a one shot I can play. We'll see. All right, guys. So if you did, this is your last chance. If no more questions, we're going to raid. I think we're going to raid Anko. I don't really feel like looking for someone today. She's playing Planet Crafter. I'm not sure what it is. Don't mind my model being a little bit choppy. It's because I have my browser running. No, no more questions. Alright. Yep. If you want to watch this stream back, the VOD of course will be available on Twitch. And next week it will also be available on my YouTube channel. There's a specific playlist for the podcasts. So I'm hoping to, by the end of 2025, which I know is still a really long way away, to have a couple of them in there. So we can keep them forever, you know, look back on it. And I'm hoping for a lot of interesting questions again next time. We'll see. I don't even know the topic yet. Alright. Raid. Let's do Anko. Start raid. Goodbye, Nim. Thanks for joining and the interest. I'll see all of you next week. I don't know if I'll be live tomorrow. Depends on how I plan everything. But I'll probably be live either tomorrow or the day after, Tuesday. My model really hates me having my... Okay, that's so funny. Anyway, have a good night. Take care of yourselves. Have some good food. Some social interaction. And I'll see you all next time, alright? If you have any tips or tops for this format, also don't hesitate to tell me. Bye bye. Take care.